Hey everyone! So I know you're going to see the title of this lesson and start panicking that I'm going to make you write loads and loads and loads and all that kind of stuff. I'm not, I promise, but we do need to start having a look at some of the exam questions and how they work on the crime and deviance topic. So we're going to look at one type of question today. You'll do a little bit of writing to send me, but not too much, I promise. So for a starter, what I want you to do is pause here and answer the short questions just like we would do if we were in the classroom. So you only need to bullet point the answers, really, really short. On the next slide are the answers, so don't cheat, don't move on too quickly, but any that you're not sure about, can you please make sure you write in a different colour for your own revision so that you know which bits you are less sure on than others. So pause here, 9 quick questions, short bullet point answers, answers on the next slide. So I'll whiz through each of the questions, just explaining what the answers are, and then we'll move on to today's lesson. So 2 ways functionists argue deviance can be functional for society. Those were the 5 things we've talked about. They're in the little booklet as well as the lesson. So it's a safety valve, boundary maintenance, it reminds us what's acceptable and what's not. Social change, so that was the example of things like the suffragettes or Rosa Parks, where deviance actually allowed society to change and move forward. It employs a lot of people, and because they believe in the organic analogy, functionists see crime or particular deviance in one area as a warning sign that something's wrong with another part of the system. Cohen, A. Cohen, is the one who did subcultural theory, just because later on we're going to talk about S. Cohen. So make sure that you know it's A. Cohen. Criminogenic means crime causing, that it causes crime. So you'd use that in the sentence, Marxists believe capitalism is criminogenic. Marxists believe that capitalism causes people to commit crime. Crime is an act that breaks a written formal law, whereas deviance is an act that breaks a social norm. And remember, we've talked quite a bit about how there's a lot of overlap there. What does relative deprivation mean? It means feeling deprived when comparing yourself with other people. So this is a Marxist idea that the capitalist society we live in makes us feel like we're missing out, makes money and consumerism and buying stuff and owning stuff and material possessions the most important thing. So advertising, for example, tells us that we've always got to buy more. We always need to have more. Deviance is relative based on time, location, culture, and social group. Strain theory was Merton's idea. I keep saying Paul Merton, but that's the comedian off of the telly. It's Robert Merton. And Marxists might argue that there is selective law enforcement because the bourgeoisie get away with it more. They are treated more favourably by the police and the courts. And we'll talk about that more when we look at social class and crime later on. So those are your answers. Make sure you've got ones you weren't sure about in a different colour to tell you where you need to focus your revision moving forward. The aim of today's lesson then is to have a look at an exam question, and you're really lucky that the structure of crime and deviance, from what I can tell from all the exam papers I've seen, is that it's a 2 mark, a 5 mark, an 8 mark and a 15 mark, just the same as education, just the same as family. So we're not having to learn a new structure at the moment, which is just lovely. So an 8 mark question we're going to have a look at today. We've done these before, so if you remember, it will look something like, explain functionist views of crime and deviance. You should include at least 2 views in your answer, and it will be worth 8 marks. Pause here and jot down. You can do it in the little box if you want. We're going to do an essay plan together. Can you remember what the success criteria are for an 8 mark question? So pause, see if you can jot them down. You know what the little maps look like with the question in the middle. What are the success criteria? Okay, so congratulations if you talked about things like, we're always going to want to see key sociological concepts, we're always going to want to see key sociological names, if appropriate, of key sociologists. You need to explain ideas fully using Peel paragraphs, so only 2 E's, and there should be 2 of them. Remember, you don't get extra marks for a third one, so focus on 2 and make it detailed. Each paragraph should have a different viewpoint. So it says You should include at least 2 views, so that means paragraph 1 should be on one view, paragraph 2 should be on another, and make sure that each point answers the question. So pause again now and bullet point around your answer, or in a list, whatever, what you think you could include in this question's answer. Okay, so I've done an essay plan. This is how I would set it out. So the first thing, a functionist view of crime and deviance, is the idea that deviance can be functional. We've just gone through that. That's Durkheim's idea, and you could bullet point the 5 ways that deviance might actually serve a purpose. You could talk about the new right idea, Charles Murray, that crime is caused by poor socialization, that it's lone parent families, the underclass, excuse me, welfare dependency, benefits are too generous. You could talk about Hershey's bond theory, and that actually people don't commit crime if they have strong social bonds. People who are linked to their communities have more to lose if they commit crime. And Hershey talked about attachment, beliefs, commitment, and social activities. You could also talk about Merton's strain theory. So crime is caused where people can't achieve the goals that they want to achieve in the appropriate ways, and they find different ways of responding to that strain. That's what Merton called it. He said it's a strain to achieve. So he talked about the conformists, the innovators, the retreatists, the ritualists, and the rebels. And Cohen said that people commit crime if they're in a deviant subculture. So when their opportunities are blocked, people look to deviant subcultures to provide them with success. This helps to tackle their status frustration. So Cohen said that when people can't achieve in the normal ways, they turn to a subculture to get that sense of achievement. That's why boys mess around in lessons when they're not achieving in school, and girls to a certain extent, because that's how they get their sense of status, their sense of power, and their sense of worth. Subcultures have different norms and values that people are socialized into. And the key thing to remember, you only need to include 2 of these in your answer. You don't need to include all of them. So I'm not saying you now have to go and write 8 paragraphs or whatever. You only need to write 2. The key thing to remember is to try and go back and make sure that the end of your paragraph shows how it's a functionalist viewpoint. Okay, so what I've done is I've written up for you the first paragraph. It's quite long because I know I waffle on a bit, but hopefully you can see how it fits with Peel. So one functionist view of crime and deviance is the idea that deviance can actually be a positive functional thing. That's my point. Straight to the point. What do functionists think? Then I go on to explain it in more detail. Functionists believe in the organic analogy, the idea that society works like a human body and all the institutions depend upon each other. Deviance also fits into this system. That's me explaining how it can be a positive thing. Then I give some evidence. For example, Durkheim argued that small amounts of deviance in society are inevitable, as people are not all identical robots, and are also useful. Deviance helps to remind us where the boundaries are for acceptable behaviour. For example, naming and shaming a criminal keeps the rest of us in line. Deviance also keeps lots of people employed in prisons, the legal system, the police, etc. Okay, so that's my evidence and my explanation. It overlaps a little bit, but I've not listed the 5 things that Durkheim said. I've picked 2 of them and just briefly explained them. Then I link it back to the question. As a result, deviance in manageable amounts brings more positives to society than negatives, helping to maintain social order and harmony. And we know that that's a key functionist idea. So, over to you guys. You've got the whole essay plan with all the key things on. What I want you to do is to choose one of the other functionist views on crime and deviance and write the other Peel paragraph. So you've already got 4 marks because I've written that first paragraph for you. All I want you to do now is choose one of the other viewpoints and write me a Peel paragraph. You can use my sentence starters and things like that if it helped you. You've got the essay plan here ready to go. The key thing I'm looking for is how much detail can you explain that in about 5 minutes. Okay, so I'm not expecting you to spend hours on this. 1 paragraph, send it to me for marking. I'm going to put these marks in my spreadsheet to see how we're getting on and if we can remember how to write an essay. Take care, and I'll speak to you all soon.